This is how I brainwashed myself to be a millionaire at 20 years old. Growing up in a big family, we didn't have a lot of money. As I got older, I realized that your brain has a specific operating system for money, just like a computer. Mine was programmed for poverty, so I had to hack it. Most people think mindset work is just about positive thinking, but I'm going to show you why the mental programming that I used took me from $20 to my name at 18 years old to building a business that generated over $13 million just 4 years later. If I did it in such a short period of time, I believe that you can too, and probably even faster. Today, I'm giving you the exact steps to get there. You'll be happy to know that the techniques I used aren't some secret, but it's shocking how almost nobody does them consistently enough to actually see results. What most people get wrong about becoming wealthy is they think it's about finding the perfect opportunity or building the perfect skills. And don't get me wrong, those things do matter, but it goes beyond those things. Because your external reality will never exceed your internal programming. This is why I had to become obsessed with reprogramming my brain first. But before I tell you what I did, let me show you why it works when everything else fails. You see, naturally, I inherited a mindset rooted in scarcity. Growing up in a big family, we didn't have a lot of money. At one point, my entire family, all 12 of us, were living in a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom house. My mom had a 15-passenger van, and when it came to clothes, I wore my older siblings' hand-me-downs, which I'm sure many of you guys can relate to. But my biggest limitation wasn't my circumstances. It was that I wasn't exposed to wealth at a young age. When I was little, social media was not as big as it is today, so you couldn't just see wealth online like you can now. I didn't even know that wealth like that existed. You hear about it, but when you don't see it, it's just not something that comes to top of mind. Once I got older, I started to realize that there are real people that build real wealth on a day-to-day basis. My biggest struggle was just understanding how. Because I didn't come from a place of money and because I was already working multiple jobs, I didn't understand how I was supposed to achieve wealth when I was already working so hard. So for a while, I was asking, how do I make money when I don't have any, instead of believing that it was possible and figuring out how later. I probably would have stayed stuck in this loop forever if something hadn't caused me to change my perspective. One day, I had a wake-up call that forced me to face reality. When my brother Khalil passed away at such a young age, I went through what a lot of people go through when they lose someone close to them. I started questioning everything, and I couldn't understand why he was taken so soon. I realized that all the plans we make, the some days or when I have time, don't matter if we don't have tomorrow. The month before he passed away, we planned a trip to see my mom. At this point in time, I was living in Nebraska, he was living in St. Louis. He was working, I was still in school, and so we both figured that the best time to go see her would be winter break. We literally had everything planned out, but he passed away before we could make the trip happen. That's when I understood that my current mental programming would keep me stuck forever if I didn't actively choose to change it, because life doesn't wait until you're comfortable with change. I had to ask myself some hard questions. If I keep thinking the same way, what will my life look like in 5 years? And if I don't change my thinking now, then when will I? My brother passed away when his wife was about 8 weeks pregnant, and knowing that he would never get to meet his daughter, and that his daughter, my niece, would never get to meet her dad, that was a big weight on me and something that was really hard for me to wrap my head around. I took that as a personal responsibility to do the best that I could for me, my family, and for my new niece. I realized that she would always grow up at a disadvantage because she would never have a father. During this time, I realized that it was really easy to be sad and play the victim. Most things didn't really matter to me anymore, and I just felt like so many people spend so much time on things that aren't actually important. Then, when we lose what matters most, we have a mental reframe, but it's already too late. After my brother passed away, I closed myself off. I felt like life had been so unfair that I felt like I deserved not to care and I deserved to be sad. But I also realized that if I stay in this mindset, my life is only going to get worse. The domino effect is real. If something bad happens and you allow that one thing to create a domino effect and drag everything else down, you are cutting yourself short, because all it takes is one thing to stop the pattern. I had to accept that yes, I am sad, and yes, life is unfair, but truthfully, things like this happen to everyone. It may be unfair, but I'm the only one that can change my life. And since we can't know how long it is that we have to live, I realized that I wanted to make the very best out of this life that I have. But even with that realization, I still had the same fundamental problem. I was stuck in what I call the how thinking. How am I going to make money when I don't have any, instead of at least believing that it was possible first? first. Every time I tried something, I was nervous about whether it would work or not, but to be honest, I've always been the type of person who was dedicated and consistent with the things that I tried. I'm definitely not perfect. Sometimes I get tired, I do get burnt out, but I've always been the type of person to continue going and continue working hard even if it didn't work out the way that I expected the first time. The problem wasn't the opportunities. It was that my brain was programmed for limitation. So I was asking all the wrong questions. I had to ask myself why some people seem to naturally attract success while others seem to struggle no matter how hard they try. Turns out the answer was the exact opposite of everything I thought I knew about success. Just like a computer runs on an operating system, your brain runs on mental programming that was installed in childhood based on what you experienced. If you grew up witnessing struggle, limitation, and making do with less, that's the software your brain is going to run on, and it will keep producing those same results no matter what business tactics you learn. The reason most people stay stuck isn't because they don't know what to do. It's because their mental programming sabotages them every time they start to succeed. You have to update your software before you can run different programs and see different results. But here's where it gets really interesting. This software sets your baseline expectations and your upper limits. Think about it like this. Your mental programming sets the floor and the ceiling on what you can handle in life. The floor is the minimum level of struggle, drama, and problems that your brain thinks is normal. If life gets too easy, you will unconsciously create problems to get yourself back to where you feel comfortable. The ceiling is the maximum level of success, money, or happiness that your brain thinks you deserve. If you start exceeding it, you'll sabotage yourself to get back down to what feels familiar. Most people try to achieve wealth while their brain still has a ceiling set at struggle and the floor set at just getting by. It's like trying to drive forward while your parking brake is on. Mental reprogramming changes both the ceiling and the floor. So, success becomes the expected outcome rather than the lucky break that makes you feel uncomfortable. When your brain expects abundance at a core level, you start noticing opportunities that were always there but were invisible to your previous programming. Now, here's the actual science behind it. Where your attention goes, energy flows, and what you focus on consistently becomes your reality because that's where you're directing your actions. Your brain has something called the reticular activating system that filters information based on what you told it is important. Reprogram it and you will literally start seeing a different world. Scientists have proven that you can create new neural pathways at any age. This means that you can literally rewire your brain for success. Every decision you make is either reinforcing your old identity or building a new one. The mental work ensures that you are consistently building the new one. Now you might be thinking, okay, this works in theory, but does this actually work in real life? Well, here's what actually started happening when I applied this. The first time I noticed this working was pretty early on. I actually interviewed for a billionaire family at the age of 18. And when I was first applying for the job, I kept thinking, why me? Why would they pick me? I'm 18. I'm not CPR certified. I'm still in college. I don't have a degree in childcare. But then I realized that this wouldn't serve the person I'm trying to become. And so I literally had to flip it in my mind to why not me? I started focusing on what I actually brought to the table because I was amazing at childcare. I had tons of experience. I grew up in a big family. I had been doing childcare for years now. And some of the small things I realized I could just go and get those certifications. I ended up getting the job because I focused on confidence instead of focusing on my limitations. This was my first proof that mental programming really works because I started seeing myself differently and so did other people. But this was just the beginning. The real test came when I started my business ventures. When my attempts at dropshipping, trading stock options, or any other businesses didn't work, my old programming might have told myself I knew this was going to be too hard. But instead, I approached them with the mentality that none of these were failures. Instead, they were learning opportunities preparing me for the success that was to come. I maintain the belief that I only fail if I give up. If you keep trying, you continue learning to prepare you for when you do succeed. When Airbnb finally worked and I made my first $100,000 at 19, I wasn't shocked. I had to take a moment to process it all, but I wasn't surprised because I was already preparing for it. I had already programmed myself to expect success. And once that momentum started, the compound effect started showing up everywhere. I began investing my money instead of spending it on temporary things that would only provide momentary gratification. I started making decisions from an abundant mindset. For example, I realized that if I took the money that I was making and continued to put it back into scaling my Airbnb portfolio, I could have 10 properties making $50,000 per month instead of one making $5,000 a month. For me, it wasn't about being satisfied with one Airbnb or not. It was about everything that I wanted to create for myself, my family, my community. Eventually, I want to build a mosque in my community and start a charity for orphans. endorphins. I realized that the more that I do for myself, the more I can help others, because the better that I am, the better I can serve other people. Money isn't everything, but more money does mean more opportunities. People around me started noticing I was carrying myself differently, speaking more eloquently, and I was approaching opportunities in a different way. The external results were $13 million by 23 years old. This was the natural outcome for the internal transformation that had already happened. So you're probably wondering, what exactly was I doing every day to create this transformation? Well, here is the system. I'm going to break it down into specific practices that made all the difference, starting with my 5 a.m. daily routine. Now, I want to preface by saying I am naturally not a morning person. I love nighttime, but in Islam, we do have to wake up early to pray. So every single morning at 5 a.m., I got up to pray Fajr. Then I read important reminders that I printed and framed on my wall. But I didn't just write generic positive statements. I wrote specific statements that I wanted to see true in my life. I wrote my goals in 2 specific categories: I am and I will. So I wrote I am statements for my present identity, and I wrote I will statements for my future identity. For example, I had I am healthy, I am wealthy, I am kind, I am intelligent, I am capable. I also had things like I will be a millionaire, I will retire my mom, I will change the world. Reading these out loud every single day held me accountable for my actions. But the words were just part of it. I needed to make this change physical and visual too. So I created physical anchors for my new identity. I created vision boards that showed how I wanted to live my life and the impact that I would have on others as well, not just things I wanted to buy. I printed out affirmations and framed them and hung them on my wall so I could read them out every single morning. I changed what I was feeding my mind, and I will say this one can be hard sometimes, but I tried to stop scrolling on social media and replace it with books. Even when it's hard, audiobooks can be great. Replace music with audios or motivational tapes on YouTube. It wasn't always fun. Sometimes it was a challenge for me, but I tried my best. Every day that I made the intentional decision to not feed myself something negative and instead feed myself something positive, it made all the difference. The visual reminders forced my brain to focus on where I was going rather than where I currently was. Bryson taught me to stop focusing on how I'm going to make money and instead start focusing on why I want to make money. He learned this from one of the books that he recommended me, but he told me that if my why was big enough, the how would figure itself out as long as I believed that it was possible and took the intentional action. You have to take the action behind it too, guys. This shift allowed me to see opportunities that I might not have noticed before because instead of focusing on limitations, I was focused on possibilities. But the morning routine was just surface level. The real shift happened when I learned about energy and vibrations. The next part might sound a little bit different from my typical business advice, but trust me, stick with me for a moment. This is what made everything actually click. I learned that everything has energy and vibrations, from the things that you touch, your thoughts, your words, and the people around you. What this means is that if you're literally always thinking and talking about being broke or not having enough money, you are literally vibrating on a frequency of scarcity. I trained my brain to start focusing on what I wanted to grow instead of what I wanted to avoid. Where your attention goes, energy flows, so I had to be so intentional with what I was feeding my mind daily. For me, there was one practice that became the foundation for all of this mental work, and that was prayer. Prayer was my key practice for removing doubt. As a Muslim, we are required to pray 5 times a day, but prayer was not just a religious practice for me. It was mental programming that removed doubt from my mind. For me, prayer is a time to step away from all the worldly things and recenter myself. It gives me time to focus on what I'm grateful for, what's important to me, what I'm working towards, what I want to have happen, the person that I want to be. If you are practicing properly, it gives you 5 times a day to constantly recenter yourself and make sure that your actions are aligned with your beliefs, your morals, your values, and what you say is important to you. I mean, think about it. If throughout the day you are constantly reminding yourself of what's important, what you're working on, and what you're grateful for, I truly do believe that if you are working towards it and it is good for you, then God will help you get there. I find peace with prayer as well because I know that if there's things that I'm stressing about that I can't control, I have to let them go. I can only focus on the things that I can control. I have to just pray and trust that God is the best of planners and He will help me get to whatever is best for me. There's a saying in Islam that basically says, don't just pray and not do anything, right? You're supposed to pray about it, but you're also supposed to have actions that follow it if you want to see success. The beautiful thing about prayer in Islam is that before you pray, you recite something called the Iqamah. During the Iqamah, you literally say, come to prayer, come to success, which is such a beautiful thing. Prayer helped me accept what I couldn't control and take massive action on what I could control. Through prayer, I was able to shift my mindset from how will this happen to I trust that this is possible and I'm going to do everything everything that I can to make it happen. Now, I understand everyone doesn't pray 5 times a day, but for you, it could be anything that recenters you and causes you to take a moment and think about what's important, what you need to work on, and what you are going towards. Literally, you can find any practice that works for you, whether it's journaling, meditation, going to church, gardening, whatever it is, use it to reground you and focus on what actually matters. The spiritual foundation was crucial, but there was one more thing that tied everything together. I also had to learn to act like I was successful before I had any proof that it would work. I started making decisions from the identity of someone that was already wealthy instead of someone who was trying to become wealthy. This meant specific things like investing the little bit of money that I had instead of spending it on material things, walking into that billionaire interview with confidence, and using the failed business ventures that I had as lessons instead of proof that I wasn't ready or meant for success. When I started my Airbnb business, I approached it like I was already someone who had multiple properties, not someone who was lucky to have just started one. The belief had to come first, then the action, then the results, not the other way around. Now, I know what you're thinking. This sounds great, but how do I do it myself? Well, here's exactly how. Step 1 is start by clearing your mental resistance. Mental resistance is all the fear, doubt, and limiting beliefs that makes you think this won't work for me, or I'm not the person who gets rich. Begin each day with some form of meditation or prayer. This helps you release control over the things that you cannot change while taking responsibility for the things that you can. Use this time to actually get clear on what you want rather than the things that you're trying to escape from. Ask yourself, if I don't change my thinking now, when will I? And if I don't take action on this, who will? This creates the mental space that is needed to believe that change is possible. It's important to recognize that sometimes you have people in your life that do love you, but they don't always recognize your goals, or they might have a lot of mental resistance themselves. Even people who love you or have your best interest at heart could have mindset challenges that put limiting beliefs on you. When you're at this critical stage, the last thing you need is people that make it harder for you to believe in yourself. So if this is the case, just be careful about oversharing or maybe create just a little bit of distance between you and those people. Step 2 is programming your new identity. Write down your goals in 2 categories. I am for your present identity and I will for your future goals. Print them out and put them somewhere that you can see and read clearly every single day. Remember to focus on who you want to become, not just what you want to have, because although building success and wealth is amazing, I truly do believe that a beautiful part of the journey is growing into the person that you want to become. All of the struggles, the ups and downs, they can either help you become closer to the person that you want to be or take you away from it. Building a business is not easy. It's romanticized online, I know, but it has its challenges like anything else. Being able to persevere through the tough times and keep your head up when things get hard and stay consistent when it doesn't feel easy, I truly do believe that these are the things that shape you into an even better person. You'll become more resilient and you'll have more conviction that you can overcome challenges. Step 3 is taking daily action that matches your new identity. Remember that thoughts lead to actions and actions become things, so the mental work only matters if you change your behavior. Each day, make one decision that matches the new identity you're creating, not the identity that you are currently living in. Be willing to invest in yourself and take calculated risks that your old programming probably would have talked you out of. Understand that every decision is either bringing you closer to where you want to be or it is taking you away from it. One of the biggest mistakes that you can make is expecting to see results immediately and then quitting your mental programming a couple days or a couple weeks in. The internal transformation takes time, but once it happens, the external results are inevitable because you've literally altered your mental programming. You're now operating from a completely different system. Remember that you have to stay consistent daily, not just when you feel motivated, and that's the difference between what keeps people stuck and what allows others to see success. For me, it took several months, even years, for me to start seeing the external results, but once they started happening, the momentum built rapidly. But here's the reality. Most people are going to watch this video, feel inspired for a few days, and then go back to their old thinking patterns because mental reprogramming takes daily consistency. So if you are serious about this, start with 15 minutes tomorrow. Write down your I will and I am statements, print them out, and put them somewhere that you can read them every single day. If you even just do that for 30 days, watch how differently you start showing up in the world. Remember that your external reality will never exceed your internal programming. Start with the mental work, get consistent with it, and then build a business tactics. That's how you create lasting wealth instead of just temporary wins. If you enjoyed this video and you feel like there might be other topics that you want to learn about or topics that could help you get to where you want to go, please feel free to drop them in the comments, like, subscribe, and I will see you guys next time.